Alright, my One Piece enthusiasts, today we're diving deep into the climax of One Piece. We'll be unraveling the mightiest characters who might pose a challenge to our boy Luffy and the criteria that make them so formidable. As we approach the final chapter, major players like the world government, the Revolutionary Army, and the four emperors are all gearing up for their face-off with Luffy. In the midst of this grand battle royale, who could possibly stand toe-to-toe with the superpowered Straw Hat Luffy? Along with this, we'll also delve into the techniques and abilities one would need to take on Luffy. If you're as pumped as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you've got different theories or insights, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Heads up, there are spoilers up to chapter 1090, so let's dive right in. To kick things off, let's discuss the conditions needed to take down Luffy. First up is Haki. Can you even use Conqueror's Haki? Monkey D. Luffy. During the Wano arc, Luffy discovered the technique to wield Haki, and as seen in chapter 1010, he realized during his fight with Kaido that he can coat himself in Conqueror's Haki. In fact, he mastered this technique while taking down Kaido. Only a handful of the strong can. Kaido explicitly mentions that only a select few strong individuals can wield Conqueror's Haki. To challenge a powerhouse like Luffy, one needs to be proficient in using Conqueror's Haki. Moreover, Luffy learned to see the future sight with observation Haki during his brawl with Katakuri. So, to land a hit on Luffy, one would arguably need a future sight ability of the same caliber. Only Haki surpasses everything. Kaido. Taking cue from Kaido's statement in chapter 1047, there's a growing focus on the importance of Haki. It's safe to say that the mastery of Haki will play a pivotal role in the upcoming battles. In the special edition of One Piece Film Red, it's revealed that Shanks can perform observation kill using his Conqueror's Haki. This suggests that there might be hidden abilities within Haki yet to be unveiled. Thus, possessing a level of Haki superior to Luffy's could be a crucial factor in defeating him. Next up, we have the second factor, endurance. Looking back at Luffy's past battles, it's clear that he has a penchant for using moves with massive recoil. Take Gear 3rd, for example. We saw him use this during the Enies Lobby arc in his fight against Lucci. But inflating his body with air, while powerful, had a serious drawback. For a few minutes later, Luffy would shrink down, drastically reducing his combat abilities. Then there's Gear 4th, introduced in the Dressrosa arc against Doflamingo. This technique involves pumping air into his muscles. Retaining the elasticity and power of rubber, he coats the surface of his body with armament Haki. This combo allows for an attack that harnesses both the properties of rubber and Haki. But the strain on his body is too much, and after using it, Luffy can't use his Haki for 10 minutes. As you can see, Luffy loves using these high recoil moves, so if you can withstand those attacks, you'll find the perfect window of opportunity. That's why having the endurance to withstand these attacks becomes crucial. Now, while Gear 5th is an awakening of his Devil Fruit powers, and it's known to drain his stamina heavily, the exact recoil hasn't been explicitly revealed like the others. However, given the intense energy drain, it's unlikely he can maintain this mode indefinitely. So, having the endurance to outlast him while he's in this state is a must. Moving on to the third factor, compatibility. As we saw in the Skypiea arc, when Luffy took down Enno, the tide of battle can turn based on elemental compatibility. So when trying to defeat Luffy, compatibility plays a big role. While Luffy, being made of rubber, has resistance to blunt force and lightning, he's vulnerable to slashing attacks. Nowadays, Haki is used as a standard defense, so just because it's a slashing attack doesn't mean it's a disadvantage. However, if Luffy and an opponent were evenly matched in Haki, it would be tough for Luffy to fully defend against a slashing attack. So, in such cases, slashes might be more effective than punches. Moreover, in the Wano arc, Luffy awakened as Nika and mastered fighting with Gear 5th, significantly powering up. This means Luffy largely relies on his Devil Fruit powers in combat, so against someone who can negate Devil Fruit abilities, he'd be at a serious disadvantage. So considering these factors, Haki, endurance, and compatibility, let's think about who might stand a chance against Luffy. First up, we've got Shanks. This hat means a lot to me. I'm entrusting it to you. Come return it to me someday, when you've become a great pirate. Shanks. When Luffy was just 6, Shanks spent a year in the Fuchsia village, becoming a significant influence in Luffy's life. He's pretty much the epitome of the pirate Luffy aspires to be. Given the promise they made in the first episode, I'm willing to bet we'll see a reunion between the two. But considering Luffy's bold claim in the Punk Hazard arc about taking down all 4 emperors, this reunion might just turn into a showdown. So the million-dollar question, can Shanks really take down Luffy? Let's dive into Haki first. Shanks isn't just adept at armament, observation, and conqueror's Haki. In episode 1055, he pulled off a crazy stunt by repelling Admiral Ryokugu against his conqueror's Haki from a distance. And in episode 1079, not only did he showcase future sight through observation Haki, but he also displayed an attack enveloped in conqueror's Haki. It's clear his mastery over Haki is top-notch. Moreover, it's stated that he can perform observation killing using conqueror's Haki. His Haki level? Definitely a cut above the rest. He therefore fulfills the condition perfectly. Next, let's talk about durability. Given his height of 199 centimeters, he doesn't particularly stand out physically in the world of One Piece. And remember when he lost his left arm saving Luffy in the first episode? That doesn't exactly scream durability, but he's also clashed with Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman, in the legendary battles. Plus, during the Marineford War, he blocked Akaino's attack with just one arm, so he's no slouch in the defense department. Taking his sword skills and Haki into account, he's definitely earned a high rating. Lastly, let's discuss his compatibility. Shanks possesses an overwhelmingly powerful Haki. He's arguably the best in the series, and I'd say he's got an edge over Luffy. Even if Luffy maximizes his Haki defenses, I doubt he can fully fend off Shanks' attacks. Shanks is adept at a combat style that exploits reality, making Luffy vulnerable to his slashing attacks. So in terms of compatibility, Shanks has the upper hand. Considering all these factors, Shanks defeating Luffy seems pretty likely. I mean, Luffy is now counted among the 4 emperors. Sure, he could be considered on par with Shanks, but remember in episode 1079 when Shanks took down Kid, who was a bounty similar to Luffy's, with just one blow? That suggests Shanks' strength still surpasses even the Gear 5th powered Luffy of today. And considering Luffy has been defeated by a stronger opponents in the past, the odds of him losing to Shanks, who's at a higher level, are pretty high. Plus, Shanks has always been an icon for Luffy. It's hard to imagine him going down easily against Luffy. So yeah, I genuinely believe Shanks can defeat Luffy. Our next big name on the list is none other than Blackbeard, or as we know him, Marshall D. Teach. This guy, oh boy, he's the one who handed Luffy's sworn brother Ace over to the Navy, setting the stage for Ace's tragic execution. So you can bet Luffy's got some major beef with him. And while Luffy's all about freedom and living life on his own terms, Blackbeard's looking to dominate and control. Many consider him the prime candidate for the final big bad of the series. And let's be honest, a showdown between Luffy and Blackbeard? It's not just expected, it's inevitable. Now, the million-dollar question, can Blackbeard actually take down our beloved Luffy? First, let's chat about the Haki. It's clear that Blackbeard can use both armament and observation Haki, but what about Conqueror's Haki? Not confirmed. But in chapter 1063, there was this specific crackling sound effect and a dark lightning visual, hinting that he might just have Conqueror's Haki up his sleeve. But Blackbeard's real ace in the hole? His possession of multiple devil fruit powers, the dark fruit and the tremor fruit. Plus, he seems to know some deep secrets of the world, including the mechanics of how devil fruits work. So when it comes to Haki power alone, it's hard to say definitely if he's got the edge over Luffy. As such, he remains rated highly. Next, let's talk durability. In Blackbeard's own words from chapter 441, "My body draws in everything, even pain, more than the average person." Even though he's a Logia user, he can't just deflect physical attacks. Thus, it is clear that he draws in more pain than the average person. In his duel with Ace on Bonaro Island, he took the full force of Ace's flame fruit attack, getting scorched over and over. But as we all know, in the end, it was Blackbeard standing tall, so his durability is remarkable. And during the Paramount War, he took a direct hit from Whitebeard and still bounced back to counterattack. His resilience? Off the charts. Therefore, it's easy to imagine that he would withstand even Luffy's Gear 5th and thus fulfill the requirements perfectly. Now, let's address the compatibility issue. The power of the dark fruit can nullify any devil fruit ability by merely touching the user. So if Blackbeard gets his hands on Luffy, even Luffy's awakened powers could be rendered useless. This makes Blackbeard a nightmare matchup for Luffy. Therefore, the compatibility is perfect. Given everything we've discussed, Blackbeard's chances of defeating Luffy are pretty darn high. Sure, Luffy has the edge with his haki, but remember, he could only defeat the so-called strongest creature in the world, Kaido, because of his awakening as Nika. If Blackbeard can neutralize that advantage, awakening as Nika, the scales tip heavily in his favor. Also, we've yet to see the full extent of Blackbeard's power. Considering his bounty rivals Luffy's, and he's taken down powerhouses like Big Mom and Law, Blackbeard seems to be on a higher tier at this point. So if they were to clash, it's very possible Luffy might face a defeat, at least once. In conclusion, yeah, Blackbeard could very well defeat Luffy. Alright, let's dive into our third character, Akainu, also known as Sakazuki. During the Paramount War, he brutally killed Ace right in front of Luffy, and he's responsible for that permanent scar on Luffy's chest. Their history runs deep. Now, he's risen to the rank of Fleet Admiral in the Marines. As a result, he's rarely seen in direct combat these days. But remember how Sengoku, the former Fleet Admiral, jumped into the fray during the Paramount War? I have a hunch that when the next big battle unfolds, Akainu will be right in the thick of it. This means a showdown with Luffy is likely on the horizon, but can Akainu really take down Luffy? Let's first talk haki. He's mastered both armament and observation haki, however there's no concrete evidence that he can wield the Conqueror's haki. Considering the growing importance of haki, one might argue that without Conqueror's haki, you just can't compete with the Four Emperors. So there's a good chance Akainu can use it, but given that very few Marines in history have shown this ability, I wouldn't bet on it. Even if he could use Conqueror's haki, the true essence of Akainu's strength lies in his deadly magma fruit. He might not have mastered the technique of imbuing Conqueror's haki, and even if he had, I doubt it would surpass Luffy's. So, he doesn't quite meet this criteria. Next up, durability. Being a Logia type, Akainu can deflect physical attacks, giving him impressive defensive capabilities. However, against haki-infused attacks, his defense isn't as effective. In fact, it could even make him more vulnerable. But let's not forget that during the Paramount War, he took blows to the face and side from Whitebeard, and even after being slammed into a fissure, he wasn't out of the fight. On Punk Hazard, he battled Aokiji for a whopping 10 days. His endurance, off the charts. Given that, he might even withstand attacks from Luffy's Gear 5th. I'd rate his durability pretty high. Lastly, let's discuss compatibility. As a magma fruit user, Akainu can unleash attacks so massive they alter the climate and landscape. His destructive power is on par with Gear 5th Luffy, who's awakened his devil fruit powers. And it's said that Akainu's magma can incinerate even fire, making direct contact potentially lethal. While Luffy, being able to use Conqueror's haki, might not be overly concerned, he can't maintain that protective haki constantly. There's always the risk of being burned if he's caught off guard or fatigued. So, Akainu's powers are indeed a threat to Luffy. But it does not mean that he can't exploit Luffy's weaknesses. Their compatibility isn't particularly strong, but it's not weak either. I'd say it's fairly balanced. Taking all those factors into account, the odds of Akainu defeating Luffy are low. Haki will play a significant role in upcoming battles, and since Akainu doesn't primarily rely on haki, the advantage seems to lean towards Luffy. Remember, during the Paramount War, even a heavily injured Whitebeard couldn't be finished off by Akainu. Plus, when Shanks intervened, he stopped Akainu's punch with just one arm. It's possible to argue that the Four Emperors are a cut above Akainu. To say Akainu surpasses Luffy in strength is a stretch. So, the likelihood of Akainu taking down Luffy? I'd say it's pretty slim. Alright, let's dive right in. Up next, we're talking about Monkey D. Dragon. This guy Dragon is none other than Luffy's biological father. He's the chief commander of the Revolutionary Army and is often called the world's most dangerous criminal. His reputation is pretty intense, to say the least. Now, the Revolutionary Army's main goal is to overthrow the Celestial Dragons and challenge the world government. They're not pirates, so it's unclear if they're really on the same side as Luffy and his crew. But there are ties, relationships with Luffy, Sabo and Ivankov, and Robin has her affiliations with the Revolutionary Army. With those friendships in play, it's unlikely we'll see a showdown between Dragon and Luffy. However, if a father-son face-off were to happen, you'd bet it'd be epic. So let's just speculate. Could Dragon actually take down Luffy? Let's start with Haki. I knew you had it in you from birth. Monkey D. Garp. It's not confirmed if Dragon possesses Conqueror's Haki, but considering Garp's comment there in Chapter 570, after witnessing a glimpse of Luffy's Conqueror's Haki, there's a high chance Dragon might have it too. Given that Roger's bounty is said to be the highest in pirate history, it's possible that Dragon, who isn't even a pirate, might surpass that amount. Being labeled as the world's worst criminal suggests he's no slouch in combat, so he might possess advanced Haki techniques like Observation Haki's Future Sight. Still, this is all speculative, so we're keeping our expectations high, but grounded. Next up is durability. With 0 combat scenes featuring Dragon, it's hard to gauge. But given what we suspect about his combat prowess, it's likely he's pretty resilient. However, without concrete evidence, we're keeping this rating on the higher side. Lastly, compatibility. It's unclear if Dragon has a devil fruit ability, but often when he appears, there's wind blowing. This has led many to theorize he might possess a wind-related power. In terms of compatibility with Luffy, it could go either way, so a high rating seems fair. Considering all these factors, there's a good chance Dragon could defeat Luffy. Being called the world's most dangerous criminal and having his true strength still shrouded in mystery suggests he might be incredibly powerful. Dragon's strength would make sense, given Luffy's own immense potential. It's hard to imagine Dragon easily defeated, especially by his son. If anything, it'd be an epic battle showcasing the father's might and dignity. So wrapping it up, Dragon taking down Luffy? Highly possible. Alright, let's dive into our next character, Monkey D. Garp. He's none other than Luffy's grandfather and a vice admiral in the Navy. He's faced off against legendary pirates like Roger and Rox, earning him the title of a legendary Marine. With his impressive combat skills and audacity, you can totally see where Luffy gets it from. Interestingly, even as a Marine, he shares Luffy's disdain for the celestial dragons, valuing freedom above all. During the Marineford War, he stood against Luffy, who was trying to save Ace, but deep down his emotions took over and he couldn't bring himself to fight him. So, it's hard to imagine Garp ever seriously fighting Luffy in the big battles that are bound to happen in the future. This brings us to an interesting question. Could Garp in his prime defeat the Luffy of today? Well, let's dive deep and see. First off, let's talk about Haki. It's been revealed that Garp can use both Armament Haki and Observation Haki. In Chapter 1080, there were effects and sound effects hinting at the use of Conqueror's Haki. So, it's highly likely he can wield that too. In fact, he's shown the ability to destroy buildings even without touching them, possibly by coating his fists with Conqueror's Haki. And here's the kicker. Garp doesn't have any Devil Fruit powers. Considering he went toe-to-toe with Roger, it's clear that Garp's strength lies in his mastery of Haki. In fact, his Haki skills might even be on par with Roger's, fulfilling our criteria. Next up, durability. Being a non-Devil Fruit user who excels in hand-to-hand combat, Garp has no choice but to take on his enemies head-on. Given he's held his own against legendary pirates, it's safe to say he possesses superhuman durability, so it's likely he could withstand even Luffy's Gear 5th attacks, again meeting our criteria. Lastly, let's consider the matchup. Luffy, with his rubbery nature, is super resistant to blunt force. However, Garp's Haki-infused fists have been shown to hurt him. So it's not an automatic win for Luffy in this matchup. Also, Luffy's still honing his skills, especially with the Conqueror's Haki coating technique he learned within the Wano arc. Compared to Garp in his prime, Luffy might still have a way to go in terms of Haki battles. But if both had equal Haki strength, Garp's slashing attacks could be lethal, so it's not like Garp has the perfect advantage against Luffy. Taking all this into account, the odds of Garp in his prime defeating Luffy are pretty high. Remember, Prime Garp had the power to decimate the Rocks pirates, who were the dominant force back in the day. He even went head-to-head with Roger, proving he was a force to be reckoned with. While Luffy's now considered one of the 4 emperors, he's still growing and hasn't reached his prime yet. He's not quite at the level of Prime Roger or Garp. So, putting money on it? Prime Garp could probably take down Luffy. Alright, next up we have Sengoku. Until 2 years ago, he was at the pinnacle of the Navy, reigning as Fleet Admiral. Now, he's taken a step back and serves as an Inspector General. Together with his peers, Garp and Tsuru have faced off against legendary pirates and have been a pivotal force in the Navy. During the Paramount War, he was at the forefront, but he's pretty much retired now. In the Dressrosa arc, even though he went to back up the escort for Doflamingo, he left everything to Admiral Fujitora, or as we know him, Isho. So chances are, he won't be a frontline fighter in any major battles to come, making a direct confrontation with Luffy unlikely. But a legend, along with Garp, a fight between Luffy and Sengoku? That might be something to see. So let's dive into a hypothetical here. Prime Sengoku versus Luffy. Who would win? First, let's talk hockey. It's been revealed that Sengoku is one of the rare Conqueror's hockey users within the Navy, so it's likely he's proficient in using it. This means there's a good chance he can use advanced hockey techniques and even predict the future with observation hockey. However, given the limited battle scenes involving him and no portrayal of him using hockey, we can't rank him too high. Next, durability. While we don't see much of him in combat, he's a user of the human fruit, mythical Zoan model, Great Buddha. He can transform into a giant boasting incredible resilience. Zoan-type devil fruits in general are known to enhance physical capabilities. And Sengoku, with his mythical Zoan power, probably even has higher durability among them. Safe to say, he checks all the boxes there. Lastly, compatibility. When transformed into the Great Buddha, he can unleash shockwave-like attacks, indicating immense power. On the flip side, Luffy, having awakened as Nika, possesses immense strength too. In terms of raw power, it's a close call. Sengoku is also known as a master strategist. However, Luffy's unpredictable fighting style has led him to victory against tacticians like Crocodile and Doflamingo. Considering Luffy's track record, Sengoku's strategies might not be as effective, so it's hard to say Sengoku has an advantage over Luffy in this matchup. Considering all these factors, the odds of Prime Sengoku defeating Luffy seem low. While Sengoku's combat prowess is undeniably impressive, his rise to the top of the Navy is believed to be more due to his leadership and tactical acumen. In a straight-up fight, he might not even measure up to Garp. And remember, strategies usually work best against opponents with some level of predictability. Luffy, being inherently unpredictable and now able to fight as he imagines after awakening as Nika, might not be swayed by any strategy. So it's tough to imagine a scenario where Sengoku really gets the upper hand against Luffy. In conclusion, the chances of Sengoku defeating Luffy are pretty slim. Alright, let's dive into it. Coming in at number 7, we have the Pirate King, Gol D. Roger. Now, since he's already passed away, a face-off with Luffy isn't on the cards. But there are some uncanny similarities between them. Both have a profound love for freedom, share that phrase, and can hear the voice of all things. If Luffy were to become the Pirate King, imagining a showdown between the old and new Pirate Kings is mind-blowing. So let's just speculate on who'd come out on top. Can Roger really defeat Luffy? Let's start with the hockey skills. Roger mastered all 3 types of hockey and had an exceptional ability to wield the Conqueror's hockey. I mean, during his clash with Whitebeard, he created a shockwave so powerful it could have blown away clouds or even islands. That's some serious hockey power right there. Plus, he's rumored to hear the voice of all things, suggesting his observation hockey was in a realm few could reach. So, chances are, he might have been able to predict the future. As Kato once exclaimed, it seemed Roger didn't have any powers. It's just his hockey. That surpasses everything. Based on Kato's comment in Chapter 1047, it seems Roger's hockey prowess was unparalleled. So, he might have been a stronger hockey user than even Luffy. By that metric, he checks off the criteria completely. Next up, let's discuss endurance. Roger didn't have any devil fruit powers, so he had to rely solely on his physical strength. And given that he ascended to the title of Pirate King, his defense was undoubtedly top-notch. Shanks in Chapter 590 once said, "I wished at times that the captain would run away or even cry." That implies that Roger stood his ground against formidable foes. He likely had many battles where he emerged victorious, despite being heavily injured. Considering these feats, there's no doubt his endurance was at the highest level. Again, he ticks off the criteria. Lastly, let's touch on compatibility. Roger's primary fighting style involved a combination of his immense haki and swordsmanship using his beloved sword, Ace. Given that his haki might surpass Luffy's, Roger's attacks would likely exploit Luffy's weaknesses, making for a perfect matchup. Summing up all those factors, it seems pretty likely that Roger could defeat Luffy. As emphasized by Kato's statement in Chapter 1047, the importance of haki is paramount. And with Roger possibly having the upper hand in haki, he stands a strong chance of winning. Now, even though Luffy's growth has been remarkable, rising to the rank of a 4 emperors, he's still evolving. Just looking at the bounties with figures like Shanks, Blackbeard, and Mihawk out there, there is always someone above. He hasn't reached a level comparable to the Pirate King yet, so it's safe to say Roger could probably take down Luffy. Alright folks, moving on to the 8th spot, we've got the mighty Whitebeard, also known as Edward Newgate. Now, Whitebeard has already met his end in the Paramount War, so a face-off with Luffy never took place. However, in a world without Roger, he reigned supreme as the king of pirates for a long time and was even dubbed as the man closest to the One Piece treasure. And let's not forget, he was like a father to Ace, whom Ace fondly called Old Man. Given the stature of such a character, one could only imagine the fireworks if he ever squared off with Luffy. So the burning question is, could Whitebeard defeat Luffy? First, let's talk about haki. Whitebeard was not just proficient in all 3 types of haki. During his prime, he went toe-to-toe with Roger. Their clashes with their haki-infused swords were so intense that they sent shockwaves powerful enough to split the heavens. So we can say that his haki prowess was on par, if not superior, to Roger's. But considering he was on equal footing with Roger when combining his Tremor Fruit abilities and haki, solely based on haki strength, he might still be a touch below Roger. However, compared to a still learning Luffy, Whitebeard's haki expertise is undoubtedly superior. Next up, let's discuss endurance. During the Paramount War, Whitebeard initially fought alongside his crew, but later decided to stay back alone after Ace's rescue. He took on the Navy head-on, and even after being impaled by Squard and having half his face blown off by a Kanu, the old man kept on fighting. Even after being barraged by the Blackbeard pirates, he managed to keep conscious and shout. Talk about an unbelievable endurance, right? So he checks that box with flying colors. Finally, regarding their combat compatibility, the destructive power of Whitebeard's Tremor Fruit is of cataclysmic proportions, making it near impossible to dodge. So even if Luffy, awakening Nika, went all out, completely defending against such a power would be a challenge. On the flip side, Whitebeard doesn't have a specific counter to Luffy's attacks and would have to rely on his haki for defense. So it's not exactly a one-sided affair. But given Whitebeard's superior haki and the potential damage from his Naginata, Murakumagiri, Luffy would be at a significant disadvantage. Taking all these factors into account, the odds of Whitebeard taking down Luffy seem pretty high. The 9th and final person is Imu, who reigns at the top of the world government. His name often pops up when discussing potential final bosses in the One Piece saga. We first got a glimpse of them in Chapter 1084. Imu revealed himself in front of Sabo and King Cobra, showing off just a fraction of his power. He took down King Cobra in cold blood and left Sabo seriously injured. Given the close ties between Luffy and King Cobra, you've got to wonder, is a showdown between Luffy, who loves freedom, and this ruler of the world, Imu, inevitable? Can Imu actually defeat Luffy? Let's analyze what we know so far. First off, let's chat about haki. We haven't seen Imu using haki yet, but considering he's seated on the empty throne, the symbolic seat of the king of the world, is a safe bet they possess the Conqueror's haki. I mean, he might even have one of the strongest Conqueror's hakis in the series. But he didn't seem to sense Sabo's finishing move, the Fire Fist in Odobisha, and let him escape. Also, he didn't detect Wapol sneaking around the empty throne. So, it's likely he can't use Observation Haki's future sight. As for Armament Haki, well, that's still up in the air. But one thing's for sure, if it's a Conqueror's haki showdown, Imu probably has the edge over Luffy. However, when it comes to other forms of haki, Luffy might have the upper hand in experience. Next, durability. In Chapter 1085, Imu transformed into a creature with massive fangs. If that's a devil fruit ability, it's probably a Zoan type. He also effortlessly swallowed one of Sabo's flame fruit techniques, so he can likely withstand Logia-type attacks. But as we've seen with characters like Kaido and Big Mom, physical size matters in One Piece when it comes to durability. Imu looks considerably smaller than the average humans, so he might be more vulnerable when not using his abilities. But if he does, I'm betting he can withstand Luffy's attacks. Lastly, compatibility. If we look back, the Liberation Warrior, Joy Boy, from 800 years ago, was defeated by the 20 allied nations. If we follow that trail, it suggests that Imu, who probably battled Nika back then, was stronger. And if Luffy's Gear 5th is on par with Joy Boy, then it's possible that Imu could overcome Gear 5th. However, the world government is on the hunt for the human fruit, mythical type mode, Nika. Keeping that name hidden suggests that Imu had a tough time against Nika, so the matchup might be closer than we think. Alright folks, considering everything we've discussed, there's a pretty darn high chance that Imu can take down Luffy. Now, let's entertain the idea that Luffy's gum fruit is actually the human fruit, mythical Zoan type Nika. Suppose this fruit embodies the will of the legendary warrior Nika, who liberated people 800 years ago. With that in mind, Imu, who stood at the pinnacle of the world government that seized world dominance 800 years back, might very well be the one who defeated Nika himself. So, it's highly likely that even now, when Luffy turns into his Gear 5th form, or as some say transforms into Nika, Imu can beat him. Considering he's a top contender for the final boss, Imu might push Luffy to the brink of defeat multiple times, just like Crocodile or Kaido did. Now, when we talk about those with the highest potential to defeat Luffy, the list is topped by 6 folks, like Shanks, Blackbeard, Garp, Roger, Whitebeard, and of course, Imu. Following them, Dragon got a pretty high rating, while Akainu and Sengoku came in slightly lower scores. And let's not forget the likes of the God Knights, like the Five Elders or St. Garling, along with many other characters we expect to see in the future. So there's no shortage of contenders who might have a shot at taking down Luffy. Well, that's my analysis. What do you guys think? And that's it for today, too. This channel posts summaries, explanations, and ranking videos related to One Piece. If you like One Piece, we would be happy if you could support us by subscribing to our channel and commenting. Thank you for watching till the end. We'll see you in the next video.